Welcome, everybody, to the Resistance broadcast. You got John here, James and Lacey, and we welcome you to this episode on this Monday. It is, what's today's date? June 12th. And it's an exciting time in TRB land. I don't know if you had a chance to check out last week's TRB Live or on your podcast apps, but Lacey shared some news with everybody that she's expecting her first boy, her second child, later this year. So congrats again.
Very exciting. In November. Yeah, I'm excited.
Yes.
The funny thing is, before we said anything, we were talking about Ahsoka and how it, most likely will end on October 11th. And in my head, I literally was like, okay, cool. That's like a month before the baby comes.
True.
Yeah. It makes a big difference.
Yeah. And then Skeleton Crew, we don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
When that comes out. But
Skeleton Crew might be running the Skeleton Crew of this podcast.
There you go. That's very possible. But then other news we have as well is tomorrow from our respective locations, James and I will be boarding flights and heading to La La Land to head to Hollywood because on Wednesday night, the both of us are representing TRB. Thanks to invites from Lucasfilm and Disney, which we appreciate very, very much. We're going to the red carpet world premiere of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. So, James, I revealed this on TRB Live last week because we got a question about our plans for Indy. So you weren't here, so I'm going to throw it to you. I'm obviously wearing my fedora. For our audio listeners, I'm wearing my fedora that I'll be wearing on the red carpet. I want to toss it to you. This is going to be your first premiere. How are you feeling about it? Nervous, excited? I know off air we talked about like you're wondering like what kind of outfit you're looking to wear and stuff. So how you feeling overall, buddy? Your first premiere, Indiana Jones, in 2 freaking days, man.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I've been slowly kind of rolling it out to my family members too. I didn't like drop like a group bomb or something. I kind of like told everybody individually. I was like, oh well, now that I got your phone, let me tell you about this thing. And it's been pretty exciting to tell each individual person because it always is. Everybody's reaction is a little bit different, So I don't know. It's such a honor that they considered us and said, this is a good opportunity for you guys to come out and take part in this. And, I'm incredibly thankful for that. And you said it was my first premiere, which I am also considering that too. Although other times you've mentioned, well, Obi-Wan was a premiere and it absolutely was. That was very cool too. But there was one thing that was sort of missing from that experience is that when we got there late and we didn't see the stuff and it wasn't, and also just, it was just part of Celebration. So almost everybody was part of Celebration.
It's also different. It's a TV show. Yeah, it's different.
Exactly. Yeah. There was some cool stuff. And Indiana Jones just has this like huge legendary reputation of what it's done for Hollywood and stuff. And it's just like, what a cool experience it's going to be. And I'm very excited to go.
Yeah. So we're heading there tomorrow. And we're going to, shoot videos and check out probably the Chinese theater and the imprints of Lucas and Spielberg, maybe try to find Carrie Fisher's star on the Walk of Fame, and a lot of things. And we're going to try to record as much as we possibly can to bring everybody into the experience. Obviously, we're going to miss Lacey.
I'll be crying at home. It's no big deal.
Maybe we could FaceTime.
No, you'll be calling us in from Sonic. You've said this before.
Just a joke.
She's going to roll out a red carpet at Sonic.
Yeah.
No.
But no, we are very excited, and thanks again to Lucasfilm for inviting us, because I've been to premieres, but it was when I was part of Star Wars Newsnet, same with Lacey for Rise of Skywalker. But this is the first time TRB has been invited to a premiere, and since we've been an independent entity, and that means a lot to me. I know it means a lot to the three of us, and a lot of it has to do with our audience staying with us and growing and sort of putting us on the map, so to speak, and
supporting us. You guys sharing the episodes, leaving reviews, sharing on social media, letting people know about us has not only supported us to get to have opportunities like this, but also bleeds into the support we see on Patreon as well, which has allowed us to go on trips like this because you guys help get us there, and then also upgrade equipment and stuff like that to make us better.
100%.
It's funny because people think like you guys earned it. It's like the thing is like they're not inviting us because they like us as people. They're inviting us because they know that people enjoy the show and they watch the show. And it's like we can do whatever we can, but it's only up to people that are watching the show that gets us there.
Yeah, and that's absolutely true. Without that support, and especially our Patreon support, like going on these trips, like just going to Celebration, our eyes are on Japan for 2025. Hopefully a new Star Wars movie's coming out that year. And now this came really recently, and then we had to scramble, and it's like, who's going? Let's book this, book that. Wouldn't be able to happen without support, especially Patreon support. So I'm going to start the show off with that. Usually I do it at the end, but you all mean a great deal to us. And if you're not able to support us on Patreon, that's totally cool. We appreciate you listening, watching, taking in the show, sharing it however you like.
Support comes in different ways.
It's all all under the TRB umbrella and the TRB family. But patreon.com/resistance broadcast. If you do and are able to support us, tiers start at $5 a month. And there's different tiers. Go check it out. Take a look. If it's something that you feel inclined to do, we appreciate that. But thank you to anyone who supports us in any way. But a specific shout out to our patrons, especially our generals and spice runners. I want to give them a shout out. CARMELO, John RISI, JETTA Rosewater, Frank Grande, DARTH HURICANE, Nick KRATZ, Christian Morales, Brian Smith, Matt CHITTY, DANI, Mike RUMORE, Matt HEATH, Brendan McLaughlin, Count PEPTO, Sneaky Zebra, Aaron Ellington, Micah Harrison, Colin Cormier, ASLAM, Jolton Jedi DiMaggio, and Diana, and David Probus, Neil Shaw, Kendall GELNER, Dave Hornack, Thomas Hennessy, Andrew Staley, Jeremy Myers, Michael Fry, and the Fort Worthian are our Spice Runners, and everyone who supports, we appreciate it. So this show, we do this once in a while where we just sort of no notes, no plan. We just want to have like an open chat, and it's probably going to be heavily Star Wars based, maybe some indie because of this week and how big it is for us, and of course Indiana Jones. But we're no pre-planned discussion, so we're just going to see what happens. And the title of this episode is clearly undetermined at this point. You're watching it and listening, you know the title. We don't know the title of this episode yet. We'll find out as we do that here. But first off, I just want to start on Indy a little bit because of the gravity of this week and everything. And I don't know. I saw that some people have already seen it. Obviously, at Cannes they did. It got mixed reviews from critics on Rotten Tomatoes, sort of like split, which I found surprising. But then I saw people like Josh Horowitz got to see it at a screening when we were recording this, so last Wednesday. And he said he had a blast, and it was the first time he shed tears during an Indiana Jones movie. So I go by people like that. I don't know what people were are expecting heading to this movie. I'm expecting a good Indiana Jones movie. I'm not going to sit here and say I expect it to be as good as the first three, because it's very hard to do that. Think about like Star Wars. Like, were the sequel trilogy movies better than the originals? Like, that's debatable for a lot of people. Most people would say probably not. It's always hard to touch the originals. So, but if I get a movie that's a little better than Crystal Skull, that's all I need. So I'm going in with that level of expectations. James, I'm not even sure how big of an indie fan you are. Have you seen all the movies and everything? Like, where are you at as far as indie? And I have a feeling you're going to become a bigger indie fan after this week.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I have seen all of the indie films multiple times. It is one of those things where I would not say like I could reference indie like I can some. I mean, Star Wars excluded because we're all nuts.
Mm-hmm.
But it is one of those things like that. I feel like I know the stories through and through fairly well. I don't know. It's not something I go back to all the time, but I will say I do defend the fourth one.
Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Yeah, I don't think it's as bad as people make it out to be. And sometimes it kind of like, it sort of bums me out. Like, I've heard people talk about like Mutt being in this one, and it's kind of like a joke or whatever. And I'm like, man, I kind of, you know, like that's his son, and he's not part of the legacy. Like Shia LaBeouf's great, and they tried to make him part of this, and like just because of the movie's reception, he's just never going to be talked about again. You know, it's kind of a bummer. I mean, he might be in the movie, I don't know, but I feel like most people would say like if they put him in, that would kind of be a mistake because they want to stay away from the stink of the one that didn't really work or whatever.
It could have been also he had a lot of personal issues and not to the level of I don't think I don't try to follow people's, even if you're a celebrity, I don't like if you have issues in your personal life, like that's not my business.
Do you mean like you think now or then?
When they were filming or putting the movie together, I think he was going through some legal stuff and some issues, and I hope he's doing better. I'm all about people getting
so maybe you're thinking like maybe like Lucasfilm didn't like working with him because he was
no. I'm saying they probably liked working with him then when George and Steven Spielberg were doing it, because I think he got his career through Steven Spielberg. Like he was recognized by Steven Spielberg, but I think I mean in 2019 or 2020, whenever they were filming this, he was going through a lot of stuff. And maybe they were like, we can't bring you in on this. We don't know where you're at and all that stuff. So that could have been it. But I don't want to harp too much on that. I'm expecting a good movie. Lacey, you were late to Indy, but you've watched them. I imagine with all you got going on, you may not have a chance to go see it in the theaters. But what are you thinking about for Dial of Destiny? What are you expecting based on like the critic stuff and stuff you've heard so far?
Well, to be honest, I'm not the biggest Indiana Jones fan. Like you said, I watched the movies probably later than most. But the funny thing is, like, I would say I've known the music my whole life. Like, I know the theme of Indiana Jones, and I know who he is. I just never really got into the movies because, you know, my family and parents aren't really into big movies like that. Like, they aren't into big franchises. Like, I found Star Wars on my own. So unless I was in second grade and found Indiana Jones, I wouldn't have gotten into it, which I didn't. So I just have never been into it. And it was one of those things that, like, honestly, John, you would mock me all the time because I hadn't watched it yet. So a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago, I finally was like, I guess I'll start watching these. And they were good. They were entertaining. They were fun. The funniest thing, though, is honestly, before I watched the whole series, I had seen the fourth one. That was the first one I saw. That is the only one I had seen. And to be completely honest, James, it's because I like Shia LaBeouf.
Oh, okay.
That's why I went to see it.
I think you've gone on record too and said like you don't mind the fourth one either. Like you just think.
No, I just thought
that's just an Indiana Jones movie to you. Yeah.
Because I had no reference to the originals, so I just saw it for what it was. I thought it was fun. It was interesting. Again, I like Shia LaBeouf. I like his acting. I'll say he's a little out there, but I loved like Even Stevens. I love Transformers. So like him in that movie was like cool to me. I loved how Indiana Jones like was a teacher at Yale. Like that was cool to me because I'm from Connecticut. So like they shot the film in Connecticut, which was interesting. But yeah, I had no reference other than that. The only thing that stuck out to me from the fourth one was the like whole nuclear bomb fridge thing. Even me, who's like the biggest defender of like, guys, suspension of disbelief, like it's a movie, let it go. That one was a little like out there. I was like, really?
I mean,
it seems a little much.
There's a lot of fantastical elements to Indiana Jones, so I always let that stuff pass.
It's fine. I'm saying it's the one thing that bothered me out of the entire movie, and everybody else had other things that bothered them. So
it is interesting. I'm going back now and rewatching them because I want to like be fresh on the stories and characters
and pick up the Easter eggs and stuff obviously, they do in this one. Yeah,
and it is one of the things that I'm kind of preparing myself for because. Not that I'm reading a lot of reviews, but I could see how people are like about it, like if jokes are cheesy and stuff. And I'm like, I love cheesy jokes. I'm trying to watch the movies and be like, there's a lot of cheesy stuff. You know what I mean? Like, look for the cheesy stuff here because when it happens in this other one, it's because they're trying to be what Indiana Jones is and not what everybody thinks Indiana Jones is because they remember the heroic parts or whatever, and not the stuff where like literally one guy like goes like this and like the hammer slips out of his hand and then it like falls on a guy's head and he like falls over. And I'm like, if that was in the movie Dial of Destiny on Wednesday, people would be like, oh my God, what is this? You know, and
Yep.
I'm like, that's Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it's unbelievable that he like gets knocked away by this bomb in her fridge and he lives. It's also unbelievable that he jumped out of a plane with an inflatable raft and he
It's
didn't fall off a
honestly
cliff and all this other stuff. It's like, that's like, I know Mythbusters did the thing, but it's probably not 3 people going to survive that, you know?
it's honestly it's Harrison Ford
Yeah.
playing Indiana Jones, but to me, as someone that's coming from Star Wars, it's Han Solo. It's the guy that lucks his way out of every situation. And it makes sense because it came from the mind of George Lucas that like those are the characters that he loves. He loves
And
those kind of like ragtag, like I've had a hard life kind of, but I'm like I have a good attitude about it and I make jokes instead of getting to my real feelings. Like
yeah. Yeah, and the first one obviously written by Lawrence Kasdan, I think even before they started work on Empire Strikes Back, and he was
sure.
like, I got to get this guy. And
Like they're very similar, obviously not just because of Harrison Ford, but just like mannerisms and
yeah, and
yeah.
the difference is, and I talk about this on, we did an episode on Just Like the Movies about Last Crusade, my favorite indie movie, that Indiana Jones is sort of this fortuitous character, and they do it deliberately where like he's always going to find his hat no matter what happens. He's always going to get out of it in the last second. That's just the pulpy nature of that character, and he's always going to ride off into the sunset, you know. Hopefully, jeez, if they kill Indiana Jones, they're not going to kill Indiana Jones, but if they did,
I hope not, because it seems like they're on this trend of let's kill off everybody that you love dearly.
Indiana Jones is different. He's going to be on a horse or something riding off into the sunset at the end of this movie, and that'll be it for Harrison Ford. Tip his hat and hang it up. And
Can't wait to see the reaction when John's crying and we all know what happened.
No, I think he's going to be just fine. I think Indiana Jones is that special character that where he's like sort of like wrapped in like this blanket of invincibility, and he always has this good fortune surrounding him no matter what trouble he gets into. Like that door is going to open at the last second for him, and like we go on that ride knowing he's going to be okay. I think that's the difference between Indiana Jones and like Han Solo out on that, you know, balcony or ramp or whatever you want to call it with Kylo Ren. Like that's not going to happen in Indiana Jones. So it's different. But yeah, I agree that Harrison Ford embodies that character. And I really don't think, I know they've toyed with the idea. I don't think that they're going to recast Indiana Jones the way like James Bond gets recast. I think this is going to be it. And if they do spin-off stuff with other characters, fine. It's and they've done younger Indiana Jones. They did Sean Patrick Flannery in the Indiana Jones Chronicles, which is now called the Young Indiana Jones Adventures on Disney Plus. But that River Phoenix also played the late River Phoenix, who was a great actor. His brother, obviously Joaquin Phoenix, still acting today. He played young Indy in Last Crusade. So they've done the thing where they do the young thing, like Alden with Han Solo. But to continue or do something in the middle, I can't imagine them recasting Indiana Jones. So I hope they don't, just for the cash grab. I've heard the Chris Pratt rumors and stuff, and even he said like, I don't want to like touch. I don't think I want to touch that.
Yeah, he said he's not going to touch it.
Yeah. So
I think the conversation happened. I think he was just like,
and even hasn't Harrison Ford said like, I'm ending, that character ends with me.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
like, you can do Han Solo if you want, but Indy, no, man. So. And he seems to love. I think he likes playing Han Solo, but I think he really loves being Indiana Jones.
Well, Indiana Jones was part of the deal. He said, "Yes, I'll be Han Solo again. Pay me $50 million and give me an Indiana Jones movie."
Is that what that was?
Is that real?
Yes.
I
didn't know that.
I've never heard that.
That's why they made a new Indiana Jones movie.
The only thing I'm slightly nervous about is that it's not Spielberg, because, and James, like you, I've been rewatching all the movies, and man, and watching like making of and stuff, and some of the scenes that Spielberg like comes up with and shares with George, and like they were such a dynamic team. I wonder if we're gonna miss that. And I like James Mangold, you know, he has a great track record. I just hope that he's able to not do a tribute band act to Steven Spielberg, but I hope it has the feeling.
I
of
think
Indiana
it does.
Jones.
The clip we saw at Celebration, that kind of chase scene was very Spielberg.
And there's a short part of that chase scene actually on Disney Plus. I don't remember them publicizing that, but you can see like 2 minutes of that chase scene on Disney Plus to rewatch it.
Nice, interesting.
Yeah. So, but you know, I don't know if you have anything else on Indy, but or what else we want to talk
I
about.
don't, but don't spoil it for me.
Of course not. Yeah.
That was my plan. I was gonna walk out of the theater and be like, "So here's Act 3."
Yeah.
You'd be surprised. It happens.
But well, we are going to do our immediate out of theater reactions on social media, and James and I, I'm sure, will film some sort of non-spoiler quick reaction video and all that stuff, and then flesh out more of our non-spoiler thoughts on the channel and on Patreon, all that sort of stuff. Because really, Indiana Jones, even though it's a different franchise, they talk about it at Celebration all the time, and it's sort of like a cousin to Star Wars, and it always sort of will be.
That is
sort
interesting.
of like Willow was.
I mentioned that I was telling people individually, and as I told everybody, all of them said, "How did you swing that? Like, how does that doesn't make any sense?" Because I'd say like it was the podcast. They're like, "What? How?" And I go, "Well, it's Lucasfilm," and then they go, "Oh," and like
That's
all of a
funny
sudden
you
they
say
put
that.
the two together. Like I don't know. It's one of those things like I know that's inherent in me from a very young age for a long time, but it's one of those things where like sometimes you're surprised when people don't put certain things together, and it's like it almost kind of logically makes sense. Like, you ask a normal person which studio did these movies. Well, they're both Warner Brothers. It's
Right.
like I don't know how many people even think of that stuff, but to me, I've always known, Spielberg and Lucas and some of these connections and stuff. So that stuff makes sense to me, but everybody else seemed surprised over the connection.
But yeah, we're excited, and we look forward to being able to share our experience with you all. Now, in terms of Star Wars, like Lacey and I, we did almost the full episode talking all about the Ahsoka stuff.
I was just gonna say, I bet you guys are Ahsoka'd out.
Yeah, a little bit. So I guess James, as the time of recording this, you probably didn't see all of that we talked about, but we really got into a lot of how like Lacey, like speculating on this is going to be tough because of that movie, right? Lacey, it's just going to be tough to figure out what they're going to do with these series.
I don't know about that. I think the only thing I really said about the TV show to the movie is I think everybody's back on the table for who's going to die. And clearly, I don't think Ahsoka's going to die in this show.
Yeah. Do you think it's going to be
And she's asking for a season 2, so.
It does seem to have not dark vibes, but definitely darker than Rebels, in my opinion. At least how they're promoting it. And I don't know if that's because they're trying to really hype up Thrawn. And they're going all in on Thrawn's a villain. Thrawn's a villain. Don't go in there thinking you're going to get some sort of redeemed Thrawn who's now with the light side.
Yeah.
Because one thing we talked about, James, and I think Lacey and I both agreed on this, that unlike Mando, where they introduced the villain later because they had to build up our new character, Ahsoka's already established. So we think Thrawn's going to be there from the beginning. What do you think?
Oh, well, to say what you were talking about as far as him being the villain, I too have speculated that maybe there would be this, like when they finally find Ezra, he's with Thrawn and they've like become friends over the course of their like being lost for so long or whatever. They have a mutual respect and they've worked together to survive or something. That's definitely not happening. I mean, it's very clear just by the trailers alone that he's like in command of the Empire on his ship. Everything's fine. So I don't know exactly what happened with Ezra. Like, why is he seem to be okay and Ezra's missing still? It's all interesting. But as far as do I think he's going to be involved from day one? Like episode 1? No, I still think they're going to save him for nearing the end of season 1.
Okay.
Because I do think the journey is going to be about Ahsoka meeting back up with Sabine and trying to convince her, and then you get introduced to Hera a little bit further, and then they have to track down some stuff and some shipments to do a thing that's all leading to finding him.
That's interesting because I feel like this whole thing was advertised as a limited series. Hasn't it been advertised as like a limited? The only time we've seen season 1 is like, I think it's slipped somewhere. So to me, that says like they're going to go out with Thrawn early. And what we had said on Thursday is like with him coming out at the panel, he's in the trailer, he's mentioned in the trailer. She goes to see people, like Ahsoka goes to see people being like, Thrawn is back. We need to find Thrawn. I feel like that's out in front. So it's interesting to hear what you think, James. And I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying, like, to me, I thought it was very straightforward.
Similar
that it was
to
like,
Obi-Wan.
oh, he's coming out early.
Like Hayden out in front, these two guys, and then like where was Vader first revealed? Is that episode 2?
I think they're trying to grab Thrawn fans, if we're being honest, like old school EU fans. And the way they're going to do that is Thrawn, just like with any normal Star Wars fan, like a casual fan, the way they're going to get them is Darth Vader.
Rip the Band-Aid off. Like, so there's not that worry or buzz as the show's coming out about like, how's Thrawn going to be? How's he going to look? And, you know, we saw him at Celebration briefly. How's he going to interact?
We did see him from the front, didn't we?
Yeah.
Like very quickly.
Very briefly.
It's one shot in the like secret
and
trailer.
He has red eyes.
Yeah. And I think my opinion, the smart move is like get him out there immediately so that whatever people have to think about it is taken care of week 1 so that we can move on accordingly with the story and not it be a thing that
people are going to have thoughts.
Of course.
Yeah.
But I think having Lars Mikkelsen helps because at least it's someone who is tied to the character. Whereas if they hired someone completely different, that leaves that actor more vulnerable to critique.
I mean, look at Ahsoka. All the comments were like, how could it not be Ashley? And I'm sure we're still going to get those this season.
And credit to Ashley Eckstein for diffusing a lot of that, you know?
Yeah. And like we talked about the other day, like her doing social posts with Rosario, saying how they're such good friends and like how she appreciates it. And she's been on set.
She was upset she didn't get to audition. We heard that from a very viable source that she wasn't allowed to audition, and I think it was Dave's choice. But she's...
Oh my God, that's so hurtful. Like, so that's like literally, I don't know, that's crazy. That's like doing the sequel trilogy and telling Mark Hamill he can't audition.
Question, do you think Taylor Gray was given any shot?
He was on set. He said he was there when we talked to him.
He said he went to the Mandalorian set or something like that.
Yeah, but why would he go there if he wasn't going to audition?
I'm in Cali and visiting my friend Dave. I don't know.
I just see it as like, hey, maybe he went in and read, but then they also gave him the floor.
we speculated on all these same angles, like why would he be there and all that. And I think
he said he was doing lightsaber training, remember?
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. This new Ezra better be good because
I hope they give him another part. Maybe they give him another part.
Yeah, maybe. And I'm rooting for the new guy.
You guys mentioned something that I was like, that's so true, which is like, it's going to be hard to speculate on this show because we know there's this other thing coming after it. And it's like, where does Ahsoka die? Well, is it in her limited series? Or wait, no, maybe it's season 1. Or, well, we know that there's this other thing, which we don't know involves Ahsoka, but it probably involves Ahsoka.
Well, it was Rosario Dawson saying she wanted a season 2. That means she doesn't die. Because why would she want a season 2 if she dies?
Yeah.
That's definitely
unless
true.
That's a total mind trick, and she's just saying that to say it.
She's not usually she's straightforward. Yeah, she's not a sneaky type.
She's too straightforward. She lets things slip.
She sometimes lets things without even looking. Like she celebrated the arrival of the announcement of somebody playing Ezra, and it wasn't even the person playing Ezra. It's like so nuts.
And
like,
she did the Sky Guy thing.
Yeah. So I mean, this Ahsoka thing, and it ties over to Thrawn too, because you guys are right. It's presented as a limited series, so it makes sense that they would be like, well, this is all about Ahsoka and Thrawn. Let's roll it out. But I'm also looking at Thrawn being the villain, not just for this show, but also that Dave Filoni thing as well. And so I'm like, well, this season 1 of Ahsoka could be the first time we glimpse him. And then we get him more in Mando, even more, in Skeleton Crew or whatever. And by the time we're at that final thing, we understand Thrawn or whatever, and we'll look back and be like, we got a taste of it in season 1 Ahsoka. He didn't really start shining until season 2 Ahsoka, And it's like then they started tying all the other characters and stuff. So I still think there's a good possibility that like we don't get a lot of Thrawn And I'm also looking at, we don't get a lot of Ezra too, because he's not even part of the anything. So where's his story? If like the whole thing that we're being teased is Sabine going looking for Ezra, and he's not really part of the marketing of this season or anything. It's like, how much can he be involved? And if it really is like, this is the end of Ahsoka, then what is next where we get the Ezra resolution?
Imagine Ezra.
Is that the Sabine show? Are they waiting to find Ezra and resolve more of that in the movie?
Yeah,
it's like, I don't know.
It is interesting though that the actor does keep tweeting things. Like he tweeted something the other day that was like, "Can't wait for tomorrow, haha." And he's like, "No, it isn't that thing that you thought it was. I'm actually putting out an album on Spotify or something like that." Like, and nothing, but like everybody just assumed that's what he meant. But
right,
yeah.
So that's why I think
he just
likes going to show up
Thursdays. You know, he's like, I can't wait for tomorrow.
I'm going to Sonic.
I'm getting my sandwich. Yeah.
Iman Esfandi is the one playing Ezra. So I'm rooting for him. I'm not trying to say like he better be good because of Taylor Gray. No. I just feel bad for Taylor because when we spoke to him, I really felt it was a genuine like, oh, I really want to have a chance to do it, But
he made it clear that he was like, I didn't start as a voice actor. I started as an actor and then became a voice actor.
Yeah. But yeah, the movie definitely makes it harder to speculate on the fate of a lot of the characters. I'm curious where they're going to go with this, and we definitely need to get more from Ezra. So, James, your thought is interesting that he may not be involved heavily. That's very possible. Or they don't find him till the very end of this series, which I just Googled. It was initially marketed as the word limited series, and I think it's still called that.
I remember that totally.
And then there were other ones. I think either Obi-Wan or Lando were announced as special event series. Like they were clearly saying this is going to be a one and done thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that means for Ahsoka. It also might depend on when Disney's like, we need this movie to come out in this year. Can they fit in all the stories they want to tell? Because everything's tying together. Skeleton Crew, Mando, Ahsoka, Boba Fett. They all have to fit in somehow to get to the point where that movie kicks off. And can they fit everything in? Does the writer's strike impact that? I think there's probably a lot of moving parts with what's going on here. And I envy Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, but I don't envy them having to get it all in line. It's going to be interesting, but I'm looking forward to all of it. I think it's not the life raft for Star Wars right now, but with the uncertainty of what's going on with the writer's strike and stuff, having this stuff established and we have these 2 shows coming out already is great. Not only for Star Wars, but for us as podcasters, because 2024 might get interesting. I think we're still going to get Acolyte next year because they finished filming. But then beyond that, I'm not sure where they're at with stuff. So we will see. But anyway, Lacey, I wanted to ask you, did you open that Luke saber yet?
I have not. It's still sitting in the box. I feel so bad. I just haven't had time.
Oh no. I was just curious if you checked it
maybe I'll do that while I'm alone by myself at home, not at a movie premiere.
Is your family's coming with us to the premiere?
Well, I meant like in TRB.
Yeah, no, I know.
I do want to ask you guys a topic because a question came up last week from one of our patrons, wonderful listeners, Danny, specifically about shipping. And I feel like that's a common discussion that comes up not just in Star Wars, but in a lot of pop culture. And I genuinely want to know your stance on it. She had talked about going into a deep dive about it. And for those that don't know, like shipping is usually when you take 2 characters and some type of, people do it in real life too, but most likely fictional story. And then you decide that they should have a relationship. Yeah. So people write on sites like AOE and other places online where they create these stories, and they can have different types of stories. It could be in universe, out of universe, alternate universe type thing, where it could be like a coffee shop, or it can be like in universe, like on Coruscant, if it's a Star Wars one or whatever. Now we have seen fanfic writers that have made the transition from doing that to the Star Wars universe. Like Leslie Headland had said that she wrote fanfic before she got Acolyte, like back in her high school, early college days or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I know on Certain Point of View, Return of the Jedi, there is Thea Guizon and then Ali Hazelwood are 2 Reylo fanfic writers that I've actually read their stuff before on AOE. They have now made the transition to A Certain Point of View for Return of the Jedi. So now they're writing canon Star Wars materials, but they got their beginnings in fanfiction. So I guess my question to you guys is, what are your stances on shipping? What are your thoughts on shipping within Star Wars and I guess any fandom?
One, I don't remember the connection, but there's some sort of thing where there was someone who was a big fan of My Chemical Romance. Do you know this story? They wrote
I'm not really sure.
They wrote like My Chemical Romance fictional stories, fan fiction of some sort, and then then they ended up writing, because of that, they ended up writing Twilight. Like it was a connection there or something.
It wasn't Twilight. There's a bunch of them that have done that. It was not Twilight. The one that I think you're thinking of is there was one that was a Harry Styles fanfic that then turned into the movies that you see on Netflix now. They're like, I think they're called like Always, Sometime Always.
No, this was I think it was like My Chemical Romance fan fiction, which then that writer ended up creating Twilight, and then there's another person who was doing Twilight fan fiction who then ended up and became popular because of that, who then ended up writing 50 Shades of Grey. And then so it was this weird connection between My Chemical Romance and
50
something
Shades of
else.
Grey was a Twilight fan fiction that then they changed the names. Yeah.
Yeah. And the person who wrote Twilight, which then it went back further. It was like this really weird connection. So it's like sometimes the fan fiction community can pick somebody who ends up writing a new entity that is like, it's so big, that new entity is so big that it creates a whole new bubble of fan fiction within that. You know what I mean? It's kind of crazy sometimes. But to get back to your point on shipping, is we actually talked about this on the Mando fan show, if you remember. Do you remember when I sort of came out about something that I found out about myself when it comes to shipping?
Was it about the Dimbo thing? Because we also talked about that.
Right. Like when that was all happening, I was like, you know what? I just realized this about myself. I do not ship. In nothing, in any property, any situation. I don't look ever at any 2 characters and go, I want that one to win, in real life or in any sort of fan fiction. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but like I like romance in the stories. That's fine. But at no point do I ever like gamble with it. Like, I'm calling so-and-so and so-and-so. And then that's my gamble. And that's who I hope get to that point.
You didn't even do it with How I Met Your Mother?
Not really.
John.
I mean, the only thing that I would say is different about that is that that's the point of the series.
That's not different though. That's shipping though.
Yeah.
You saying,
like
hey, I want this person and this person to end up together. That's shipping.
I want Stella to be the mother. I want.
Then 100% no, I did not. If that's the case.
Okay.
I did not want someone to be the mother, but I was playing the game of who I thought how I thought things would end up. But it was not from a stance of like my own personal, like, I hope Barney and Robin are together at the end of the series. It was like, do I or do I not think that will be the case? But I was not rooting for a particular couple. That's part of me that just I don't care about that.
You've never ever watched something fictional and said like, oh, I hope they end up together.
I don't know.
Because that at the baseline is what shipping is like if you watch The Office with Jim and Pam in the first few seasons, you're like, man, I hope they end up together. That's shipping.
Oh,
no,
I talk about rewatching The Office.
That's what I'm saying. I don't do
I'm just saying.
Oh, I know, but they made that so they went too hard with that, where it was like, oh, look how terrible Roy is. Here I am, I'm Jim, I'm so great and stuff. It's just like,
have you ever seen the thing where they say Jim is the villain in Roy's story?
Yeah, he is. But like the first 2 seasons of The Office, like I rewatch, I'm like, man, they really just go too far.
Loved it.
With it. No, I did too, but it's like, she's like, I really just don't get Roy sometimes, and Jim's like, oh, good.
But I don't think it's that simple. I think there's a lot of complication there.
I don't want to try to like analyze myself as to like why I do that, but if I had to, I think it's because I'm really honestly open to the stories regardless of where they end up going. I like if Din Djarin and Bo-Katan end up together, I'm interested. I'll watch that show. If they don't end up together, I'm interested. I will watch that show. I think there's a good story in both of those scenarios. So I'm not at any point making up my mind that I think these two work together and therefore they should end up together. And if they don't, then it's like this disappointing thing, because at the end of it, in all these scenarios, whether it's like Jin and Cassian, or it's Rey and Ben, or it's, you know, Din and Bo, or maybe I should say Djarin and Bo. we don't really know what his first name is anymore. But with all of them, I'm not rooting for any of them to end up together, because I'm totally open to the idea of where they go if they end up together or not. Both can be great stories to me. And usually I think they are, because they usually just deliver, like there's a point to why they have two characters not end up together. There's a reason they went that route, and I will walk with them. I will walk that path with the author, if that makes sense.
I think when it comes to romance, everybody in some way likes it, because everybody wants to be loved and to love. So I think that when we look at these movies and these shows and these books and everything in Star Wars, and we're not, as someone that has shipped in the past with Reylo and stuff, as someone that's seen these things happen, and you see the glimpses of something that could come to pass and then it doesn't, it's disappointing. Not because I'm like, this couple should have happened. It's that there is literally no romance in any of these movies or shows. And I think that shipping has allowed people to really not only find a connection with other people that feel the same way they do and like think about the possibilities and be creative, but it's also allowed people to, for me, it's been when something doesn't come to fruition and it just doesn't end the way you want to end. So you go looking for kind of a happier ending or a story that you could have expected through someone else's words. That's why I've read fan fiction in the past. Is like, oh, I don't like how this character ended up. I would love to see what would happen if they did end up together. And that's when you go to explore those things. But I've always had a positive experience with shipping. I know that with Star Wars, a lot of people are kind of on the fence about it, only because it's created fan expectations in a way that I don't think any creator, as in writer, director, producer, actor, ever expected it to. And I think in the past few years, it's gotten even bigger as like a mainstream thing, shipping, that people now force shipping onto every single thing. You know what I mean? Like it isn't something that kind of happens naturally. It's like,
oh, there's a new show. What's everybody's ships?
Yeah.
You know, create it now, call it.
Yeah. And it's not necessarily naturally happening, which I think whether people agreed with it or not, there were many elements with Rey and Kylo or Ben Solo that you were like, okay, I can see why people would want that. I can see why people think that. The enemies to lovers thing, Pride and Prejudice, I get it. But that doesn't mean you agree with it, but you can understand why people would come to that.
I technically get all of them. I get, you know, Poe and Finn. I get Poe and Rey. You know, like there's every time somebody says these two characters should ship, unless they're straight up like Rey and Palpatine or something, you know, like that literally makes no sense. Most of the time, people are shipping characters that get along or have some type of
connection.
Connection is the right word. I was going to say
because they could not get along. Enemies to lovers, they could not get along. They could hate each other.
That's true. Yeah,
that happens a lot.
It does.
But I think, so I think what's interesting about this, Lacey, is that because I'm friends with you and because I do the podcast with you, I think I probably wouldn't be thinking about it otherwise, but for the sake of romance, I do hope that it happens soon. I do hope that Star Wars gets more romance. I'm down to it, but because we're having this conversation, it makes me think, okay, well, where could we see it? And then I have to sort of, it's not that I'm hoping.
Sabine and Ezra is one that we brought up as a
I think that's the one. Yeah, that's where I'm leaning towards. I'm like, that
long
one
lost
seems
love.
But like that could be a good, I'm not hoping for it to happen, but I'm saying for the sake of romance in Star Wars, I'm looking at where makes the most sense. And for me, that one makes the most sense because it could be these like total friends that it made it pretty clear that they are not something. And then as you go that journey the whole way, it could build to that. And she could, start meaning something to him and vice versa. That's more about their relationship than just being friends. And so
I do want to let John jump in
because earned. Yeah. I think that could be a really earned thing.
I see a lot of head shaking, so I want to let John jump in. Go ahead, John.
Well, as I understand it, the original question was not how do you feel about shipping? It's what do you feel about the state of fandom and shipping, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I answered that question too.
Yeah. So
yeah.
I mean, I don't really usually ship. I think I found myself doing that more on TV shows like, How I Met Your Mother or, other shows where there's a potential for characters to get together. Movies, maybe not so much, because usually with movies, especially if it's one single movie, it's pretty well established what's going to go on. A lot of rom-coms, it's, follows blueprints and formulas and
tropes,
that sort of thing. Like I love rom-coms. Like I love Serendipity. I'm a big John Cusack fan. He's in a ton of these types of movies. High Fidelity, one of my favorite comedies. Will he get back together with his ex? Will he not? That sort of stuff. I like that stuff. I like all that stuff. But with the fandom stuff, like I had a really, really bad experience with Star Wars fandom online for like a joke tweet I made 6 years ago, and I was called really nasty stuff. I was called a white nationalist. I was called all these crazy things because of how I felt about people, in my opinion, who took it too far to the point where, like, because there was a person, I'm not going to like name names here or anything, but I think everyone might remember if they're like really dialed into the Star Wars fandom, who like paid a ton of money to like do these like interviews with like Rian Johnson and stuff. And then it turns out that person was like a borderline like stalker of Adam Driver. Like she had candles with his scent that she claimed. She went to his other premieres to try to find him. It just gets crazy in some elements of the fandom. And those, the outliers, the extremes of anything in life are very dangerous. And I'm not saying people who ship, like you can't, I feel like sometimes you can't make any critical comment about fandom shipping without people saying you're commenting on all of it or all the people who do it. I'm just saying there's like dangerous levels of extremes of this stuff where the actors are sometimes like, you need to like leave me alone. Like where it feels like Brooke Shields' character in Friends, where she couldn't like differentiate Joey Tribbiani from the character he plays on a soap opera. And it's like people get way too obsessed. I think that's very dangerous in itself. And then there's the expectation stuff, which I think is dangerous just from a fan perspective, because people were expecting certain things. And I think with anything in movies, especially Star Wars, don't like take your thoughts on where you think this story should go and get angry if it doesn't turn out the way it ended, because you're not the one creating the story. It's like, it's not directly related, but it's like when Mark Hamill said, I don't own Luke Skywalker. They rent him out to me. I do my best to tell the story. If Luke Skywalker himself can say that, then who are fans to say like they told the wrong story? And you could disagree with it, but I think, I wrote an article when I was writing back in the day, which showcased there were people who were saying like, if I had 2 bullets and I could kill Hitler or J.J. Abrams, I would kill J.J. Abrams twice because they didn't get the Reylo thing. And I had people saying stuff about you probably can't satisfy your wife. Like I had people really coming at me about what I thought were pretty innocent jokes about the extremes of shipping. And I just had a really bad experience with it all, and it put a bad taste in my mouth. And it just, but at the same time, and when I see people saying like Bo-Katan and Din Djarin, I'm like, yeah, let's go for it. Because I feel like people may hopefully have learned from the culture of shipping. I think the Raylo thing got very toxic on all sides. People who hated it. I think there were extremes on that side too, who were like very aggressive towards Raylos, and I think that's wrong. I don't think people should have done that. Let people dream and hope what they want. Let them write what they want on fan fiction. They're not harming you. You're not harming them. That you shouldn't be attacking those people. So I think both sides have extremes. Both sides are wrong. I just think it comes to a point where maybe people realize like we have, we can ship stuff, but if it doesn't happen, we've learned that lesson. We've seen that happen. Like Rey and Kylo didn't fly off into, hyperspace together. So hopefully people can still ship, but maybe not get angry at Jon Favreau if Bo-Katan and Din Djarin don't end up together, And people have shipped Din Djarin and that woman Omera from one episode of season 1. And I think that's okay to do. I think any speculation, whether it's romance or anything in Star Wars, like we speculate all the time. Like, oh man, I hope Luke comes back here, or I hope Rey does this, and all that stuff. And I think it's all good to do, but you just got to make sure that you don't take it too far to the point where one, you get angry at the creators because they didn't do what you wanted to do. Because this isn't like those books we read in 4th grade, like Choose Your Own Adventure. Like, do you want to go down this road, or do you want to take the boat over on the river over here? Turn to page 34. It's like this person is writing this movie and they're telling this story. You're the audience. You can decide whether you like it or not. But to say they did it wrong, I have a hard time with that. So that's sort of where I'm at with like the fan culture. I say go for it. Like I keep saying, like I've been having this existential thing lately where I'm like, wow, like I'm 40, like my kids are like my life now, like things are different for me now. And I'm like, we're only here for a finite amount of time. I want people to be able to write fanfic of whatever they want, celebrate whatever they want, hope 2 characters get together, because life is tough. Real life is difficult. We should be able to immerse ourselves in these fantastical stories. So I applaud it. I welcome it. I think people should always be able to do that stuff. But when they take it too far, where it becomes obsessive, or it's a danger to an actor, or anything like that, or they get mad at creators because the story doesn't end up their way, that's when it gets to the tipping point. And then, like I said, the other extreme, people shouldn't attack people who do ship, because who are you? Like, why do you care? Let people do what they want, so that's where I'm at.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Dang, we're all over the place.
Well, I mean, I think Danny had submitted that in, and I don't know if it was going to be one of those things where we made it a focal point of a show, but I mean, we pretty much treated it as the length as we would a discussion anyway. And I think we all gave really good points. Like, I feel like there's a pocket of online fandom that maybe falsely labeled me as like being anti-shipping. I'm not at all. I just think there's extremes of this stuff, and I think people should maybe not behave in certain ways, because 1, we're adults, and 2, it's like J.J. Abrams wasn't out to like piss people off, and he didn't write the story to like take a dig at people. He told the story he thought made the most sense, and this guy's like one of the most like biggest filmmakers around, and like who are we to say? So I don't know. I just I think it's a good thing. I hope people continue to do it, and I agree with Lacey 100%. I think Star Wars desperately needs more romance. I was all about what they did with Han and Kira, and obviously the Han and Leia story, and I think we're missing that. I think the Padme and Anakin stuff was a bit of a misfire due to some of the dialogue, and they rushed a lot of stuff. I actually saw someone bring up a point that they should have started the prequel trilogy with Anakin as a teenager, so that they could have more time developing that relationship, so that when he does turn, it hurts even more. And I still love the Phantom Menace. You know, Jake Lloyd did a
Mhm.
great job, and I hope he's well because I know he's had some issues.
There's always going to be ways to look at different stories where, especially when you pitch just a general idea, it's very easy to sell that idea.
Yeah.
Where you're like, oh man, they should have done the movie should have ended like this. And it's like, you're right. Like, it's really easy to convince somebody like, oh man, yeah, whoa, that would have been way better.
Is there
Right.
a YouTube channel that does that? How it should have ended, or, you know?
Yeah, but usually those are like jokes. I mean,
And
sometimes
people should be able to do
I'm sure
that
their stuff
too.
is serious, but
Just don't threaten creators. Like,
my thing though is like, I think sometimes those ideas that sound like good ideas, like when you're saying them right now, if you were in the room when they were developing, you'd run into why all that didn't work. They went down that path. They saw that, like, well, that actually, you know, now that we're really exploring that idea, because that's the obvious idea, it doesn't work for these bigger reasons that the franchise sort of relies on. And so, you know what I mean? And I'm not talking about Star Wars. I'm talking about literally anything where somebody says like, I mean, it was good, but like, I would have wished so and so ended up together for these reasons. And then you can be like, yeah, that's a
well,
honestly, it probably would have made a better movie if they did that. How often do you hear that? It probably would have been better if the movie just went that direction.
let me ask.
But it's sometimes like, they probably tried that idea and they decided against it, you know?
I want to ask Gilleran over here for your ideal, like if you had to think about how they approach a new romance in Star Wars. I'm assuming you're saying like with new characters and a new thing in the future. Besides, obviously, you know, I think you like the idea of Dinbo, which I think would be cool too. Do you want these two need to find each other throughout the story, or they are together, or like what's your ideal type of approach to romance?
I usually like it that people find them a connection through the adventure rather than starting in a relationship. Although I loved what they did with Kira and Han because it was like this tragic young love situation,
Yeah.
which was done really well. But my own personal preference is usually like an enemies to lovers, where it's like they start off and they hate each other, and then through the adventure they grow feelings or
Han and Leia.
yeah, like a Han and Leia is a perfect example. Like they don't like each other, and then at the end they obviously love each other, or something where they're stuck together and they have no choice but to get along. Those kinds of things. It's just, to me, is more interesting than someone that's already in a relationship. But I can understand why people also like those other things. Everyone has their own personal preferences.
Yeah.
I just feel like, especially with like, since we're just talking about this recently with Din and Bo-Katan, I feel like that was something that they could have explored and they didn't. And to me, it just felt like I'm not like mad at anybody about it, but it's just kind of like oh man, like it was right there. There were multiple instances. Yes, that is true. That's totally true. But then to like hear Katie Sackhoff talk about it and how she got romantic vibes as well, it was just one of those things that like I was like, come on, guys, like that's honestly for me what's missing in Star Wars. And I say it all the time and I'll keep saying it. It's like it's the thing that's missing. Is like there's no romantic relationships going on in Star Wars. And I understand that it's like, well, Lacey, there's a war going on. Lacey, there's people dying. I get that.
I don't like that. I don't
No,
like
but
that.
I understand people saying that, but at the same time, there's terrible things that happen every day, and it doesn't mean people don't fall in love.
There was a war going on when Han and Leia got together. I don't want to hear that. Like
I'm just saying people do say that.
No, I know.
Yeah. On the context of that question, I think we can circle around to all of Lucasfilm's properties. And let me ask you a question, Lacey, when you're saying, well, this is my favorite type, did you prefer Kit and Jade in Willow, or do you prefer a Dove and Graydon in Willow?
I mean, both. They're both different.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, John's asking, like, what type of a romance would you like to see in Star Wars? Would you prefer
like we
it
knew
be
from the first scene?
Yeah, but
they had their differences, and they kind of ended up, figuring
I saw
that
them
out,
as always so I understand what you're saying. I saw Jade and Kit as together from the beginning, and they were together throughout. So there was never a will they, won't they. So to me, it's like there's no reason to necessarily ship them in the sense of, hey, will they end up together? Because I knew they were going to.
Theirs was, would they reveal it to everybody? That's what their thing was.
I think it was pretty obvious that they were together.
Well, yeah, that was part of the story. But
I think shipping to me, James, is more like, will Alora, Danon, and Kit end up together? Because they have a couple moments there that they're like very close, or they're like hate each other in the beginning, and then they're close.
Oh, I saw them
the
as
end.
like sisters.
And you totally could, but there were also people that were like, is there something there? Now the Graydon Alora thing is obviously like she's with Eric, and then he's kind of off to the side like, hey, I'm the good guy, which is typical too. You have the heroine where you have the sweet guy on the side like, hey, believe in me, and then she doesn't realize she has feelings until it's too late. That's also a trope. That's like a normal thing. I would lean towards more of that one because it's a will they, won't they. You don't really know if it's going to end up, and that's kind of the cliffhanger that we end up in the series. Whereas Kit and Jade, to me, were just there. They were constant. They were great. They were rock solid. Nothing was going to happen to them. They were going to stay together.
On the Willow movie,
That's
too.
Interesting. That's interesting you say that, though, because I saw them as sort of like we had this other relationship between Alora and Graydon that was developing, and that's maybe where they end up. Whereas I was thinking potentially the opposite, where you had Kit and Jade starting together, and as the journey continues, they realize they were different people, and they'll always have that respect, but they weren't meant to be together. Like, that's where I was thinking maybe that was going to go with the series. I never saw them, especially in the middle where they were like not getting along.
I think that was Kit. I don't think it's that they didn't have feelings for each other. I think Kit was growing up.
Kit was going through the complications of dealing with the fact that
she wasn't the center of attention. She wasn't the
Alora
hero.
Danon was her parents' focus.
I get all that
Why not
stuff.
me?
I'm just saying when you're watching it midway or whatever, I'm thinking like, they're having these issues, and I could see this leading to them saying, I'll always love you, but we're different people or something. I could see it going that direction, and that would be fine.
I mean, Lacey said it before. Indiana Jones, Indy and Marion, obviously Indy and Willie, and a lesser Indy and Indy's dad and Elsa, but I think about Willow the movie, and Val Kilmer is like that very Han Solo-y type of swashbuckler, rough around the edges, Mad Mardigan, falling in love with the princess.
That's one of the reasons I loved Willow.
Sorsha, yeah, and that was a very contentious thing, and that
enemies to lovers, they hated each other. Then they don't.
So it's all over George Lucas's storytelling. The question is, have they just not found the right story, or was it simply the sequel trilogy was passing a baton back and forth and it just got messy? That could be it. So maybe
Rian Johnson made it pretty clear that they were in some type of connection.
I disagree with that, because by the end of the movie, I think she closed the door, and I think that was the end of that.
I know. James had said the infamous, I think that's over. And James was like,
yeah. John's first reaction after the movie was, well, the one thing we know for sure, that Raylo, that's done. And I'm like, I was like, you think, man? I was like,
now flash forward.
I was in for a rude awakening.
Flash forward to the first episode I was ever on. And we had to pitch our next episode. And my episode was, well, Ray and Ben end up together at the end. And John's probably like, why did I have this girl join?
No.
But it's funny that you guys say that. And I'm not excluding you from this idea either. But it's like, when I watch Last Jedi, I'm like, I totally get both sides of this. It's very evident that they are leaning them to some type of romantic connection, or it could be if they wanted to go that route. It's very clear that they're doing that. And then also at the same point, it feels like at times, especially at the end, it's like they've made their decisions and it's not going to work out. It's like, it's such a tough movie, because in a lot of ways, that's why Rian Johnson's like, yes, because he's so happy he created this thing, not to make anybody mad, but to make it uneasy,
to have you question,
to make you have the discussion and make it so unpredictable. Like, walking into the next movie, everybody's like, I've got an idea on where this is going to go, and everybody's all right. It's like, it could go any direction. He's perfectly set up JJ for, taking us down one of many paths. The problem, of course, as we all know, is that just made everybody mad when they didn't get their path. So I don't know. I feel like,
so Danny, I hope this answered
genius thing.
some of your questions because I didn't expect this to take up most of the episode, but I'm glad we did have this conversation because I don't think we do talk about romance enough. But that being said, I hope this answered some of your thoughts, and I'm interested to see what people think in the comments and share on social media, Twitter, email us if you want, resistancebroadcast@gmail.com, what you think about romance in Star Wars. Where do you lean on shipping and stuff like that? Because I'd love to hear what people think.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's gonna be like Indiana Jones and shipping in Star Wars. That's the title. It's
what? Like the last 2 minutes I've been thinking about what to do. Yeah.
Does Indy end up with Rey?
All right. Well, yeah, and I do think we need like a good romance in Star Wars because again, Star Wars is a fantasy story, and most fantasy stories have romance in it, so it definitely needs it. So hopefully they
it kicks off with Luke wanting to get the girl. That's literally what the story kicks off with.
Yeah,
and then he doesn't.
No, he doesn't.
He doesn't.
He does not get
genetic.
The girl. Yeah.
All right. Well, we want to thank everybody for listening and watching and being a part of TRB. Hopefully, we do these maybe once or twice a year where we hit record and just go. And we're never really sure where these go, but we hope you enjoyed this chat. We hope you felt like, we get a lot of vibes from everyone that sometimes they feel like they're right in the conversation and room with us. Hopefully this one in particular with no segments or anything, you felt like you were sitting at a table with the three of us because that's always the goal for these types of things. So anything else you guys want to throw out there before I take us out?
No, I really enjoyed this. And if you didn't enjoy this, then you can blame me.
No, yeah,
I enjoyed it.
I'm totally fine. Yeah. I thought maybe we might go a little bit further down the Willow route, but we kind of rounded out the whole episode.
I'd love to talk Willow more. I'd love to rewatch it, but wait.
More. Yeah. Oh, I know.
That's me looking at the camera for audio listeners in a very disgusted look. Anyway, no, I have nothing else to add.
We, because of the just recency of all this stuff with the indie premiere, we're not positive as to what our recording schedule is going to be looking like. So there's not going to be
a solo show, just me by myself,
there you go.
Online, just answering your questions.
On Solo?
No, on anything.
AMA. If you do a solo show and I'm not there.
AMA.
Yeah. I'd support that. But yeah, so we're not going to have TRB live this week for obvious reasons. But maybe we could figure something out while we're in LA. I don't know, but we'll keep everyone posted and let you know what's going on. Worst case, we take 1 week off. We rarely do that. So
or I do a solo show where I answer everything.
If you really want to.
We want? Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead.
All right. So thank you, everybody. Make sure you are subscribed. Thank you to everybody who got us over the 500 rating mark on Spotify. Amazing. James, you weren't there, but it happened live on the show last week on TRB Live. We were at 499 and 4 people threw in more ratings. So a big benchmark for us as we are growing on Spotify. So it's very cool. Thank you. Also, if you're subscribed on Apple, do the same thing. But wherever you listen to the pod, keep enjoying it. Keep sharing it with your friends who like Star Wars and all the other nerdy stuff we talk about here. And then, of course, the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@theResistanceBroadcast. Let's keep pumping those numbers up. Let's get me in that bikini, that metal bikini in Japan. And let's try to get those subscriber numbers closer to that goal. But for me, you can find me on Twitter at Johnny Hoey. And, of course, this week in LA with James covering and attending the Indy premiere. We will miss Lacey very much, but you could hit us up while we're out there. And, of course, my movie podcast, Just Like the Movies, where we did an episode on Last Crusade last week. Lacey, how about you?
People can find me alone by myself.
Oh,
it's never going to stop, folks.
No.
He keeps going, so I keep going. We're going to keep
That's
going.
Sonic.
No. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Lacey Gilleran and on TikTok at It's Lacey Gilleran.
Me?
Yeah.
You guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram, both at Myra Trunks. And I just thought of something that I think everybody will get a kick out of. I found out recently that Bennett thinks that a podcast is anytime you get together with someone else who knows what you're talking about and you just have a discussion with them. So he has started a Mario movie podcast with his friend at school. And it's
Sick.
the only reason he's doing that is because his friend at school has also seen the movie. And throughout the week, he's been meeting new people who have seen the movie. And every time he finds that out, he goes, "You should join my podcast."
Oh, that's cute.
You could join the podcast. It's for people who have seen the Mario movie, and we talk about it.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah.
I mean, the basic gist, kind of.
I was like, what Rachel said, he thinks it's when you're just down there hanging out with your friends. And I was like, to be fair.
That's what Johnny called. Johnny says, "Are you going to talk to your friends?" I was like, yeah. And my daughter, when she sees me bring my laptop and I'm going downstairs, she goes, "Daddy, working." Like, yeah, Daisy, Daddy's working. All right. Well, thanks again, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this show. And we'll keep you posted on when our next episode's coming out. But have a great week, and we will see you next time right here on the Resistance Broadcast. See you around, kids.